Hello, it's me. So, in 2023, should we rebuild ancient monuments? The first time I came across this question was when I saw an article titled, "We Should Not Rebuild Ancient Monuments." And immediately I was intrigued because I thought, what are you talking about? How can you not want to rebuild something old and historic like the Parthenon or the Terracotta Army? But then I read on and I understood the author's argument. When you look at ancient monuments, they're not just piles of stones or bricks. They reflect the values, beliefs, and lifestyle of people who lived long ago. For example, Angkor Thom in Cambodia is more than just a big stone gate. It represents the wealth and power of the Khmer civilization. Or Machu Picchu in Peru is more than just some ruins on a mountain. It tells us about the Inca Empire and how they lived in harmony with nature. In short, ancient monuments are like frozen moments in time. They help us understand the past and connect with our roots. But here's the thing, copying them exactly may not be the best way to do that, because when we rebuild something old, we risk losing sight of what makes it so special in the first place. Let me explain. First off, rebuilding something doesn't always teach us much about the past. Sure, we learn about the techniques and materials used back then, but we miss out on understanding why things were built in the first place. For example, we might rebuild Stonehenge in England, but that won't tell us why people gathered there all those years ago or what rituals they performed. We'll just have a big pile of rocks that looks pretty but doesn't teach us much. Second, rebuilding also means changing things to make them more appealing to modern audiences. This can include adding things that weren't there before, like restaurants or souvenir shops, or removing things that might be considered offensive or disturbing. For example, some people have suggested that we remove the swastika from the Buddhist temple, Borobudur in Indonesia, because it's been adopted by hate groups. But doing this would change the temple's original meaning and take away from its historical significance. Third, rebuilding also means ignoring the present. When we focus on recreating the past, we may overlook the needs of the people living in the present. For example, many ancient cities were built in swampy areas because that's where the materials were most readily available. But that doesn't mean we should build our cities that way too. We need to consider the challenges of the modern world, such as climate change and overcrowding, and find solutions that work for everyone. Fourth, rebuilding something doesn't always preserve the history of the original structure. Often we don't have all the information we need to copy something exactly. For example, we may not know the exact size or shape of certain parts of the monument, so we have to make guesses and use our imagination to fill in the gaps. This means that our version of the past may not be very accurate and could even spread misinformation. Fifth, rebuilding also means ignoring the people who are still living in the area. Many ancient monuments are located in areas that are still inhabited by indigenous peoples. And these communities often have their own stories and traditions connected to the site. When we come in and rebuild something, we may not be respectful of these perspectives and could even cause harm. For example, some people believe that the construction of Disney's Animal Kingdom in Florida desecrated the burial grounds of the indigenous Tocobaga people. Sixth, rebuilding can also be dangerous. In some cases, trying to recreate the past can lead to conflict between different groups of people. For example, the ongoing dispute over the Temple Mount in Jerusalem is a sensitive issue that involves religious beliefs and national identities. Rebuilding something in this area could be seen as provocative and lead to violence. Finally, seventh, rebuilding something doesn't always allow us to learn from the mistakes of the past. When we try to recreate the past, we may not be thinking about the problems that people faced in the past and how we can avoid them in the future. For example, many ancient cities were built without proper planning, and this led to overcrowding and other problems. If we rebuild these cities, we may be repeating the same mistakes instead of learning from them. So, based on these points, I agree that we shouldn't rebuild ancient monuments in their exact forms. But does this mean that we shouldn't preserve and protect them? Of course not. Preserving and protecting these sites is crucial because they are an important part of our shared human heritage. These sites teach us about the different ways that people have lived in the past and help us understand the forces that have shaped our world today. But that doesn't mean that we can't innovate and experiment with new ways of presenting the past. We can use technology to create interactive exhibits that bring history to life. We can work with local communities to develop sustainable tourism practices that respect the cultural and environmental resources of an area. And we can support archaeologists and historians as they continue to uncover new discoveries about the past. For example, in Greece, the Acropolis Museum uses cutting-edge technology to display artifacts from the Acropolis Hill. Visitors can use touchscreens to learn about each object and even see it in 3D. This helps people understand the history of the Acropolis and appreciate its importance. Or in Egypt, the Great Pyramid of Giza has been open to tourists for centuries. But recently, the Egyptian government has taken steps to protect the site from overcrowding and vandalism. They've put in place time slots for visitors and banned climbing on the pyramids. These measures ensure that the pyramids will be preserved for future generations. In short, while we should strive to preserve and protect these important sites, we also need to find new ways of presenting the past that are engaging and educational. By doing so, we can ensure that more people learn about and appreciate the rich history of our world. And if you think about it, it's really about finding a balance. On one hand, we want to preserve the past so that we can learn from it. But on the other hand, we also want to move forward and build a better future. Sometimes that means making difficult choices, like deciding what to keep and what to change when preserving a historic site. But ultimately, it's worth it because by finding the right balance, we can create places that are both meaningful and sustainable. The question is, what do you think? Should we rebuild ancient monuments? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, please like it so that more people see it. Thanks for watching. Bye.